He, mature and relentless, issued the challenge. She, a virgin, didn't know whether to flee or stay. The night turned into a game of provocations, and one of them would come out of it marked forever. What do you think will happen in this story? Comment and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. I promise this will be the best story you've ever heard in your life. The sun was rising over the Mississippi River, painting the New Orleans sky with orange hues that reflected on the calm waters. For many, that view was a picture of paradise, but for Emily Anderson, it was just the scenery she contemplated every morning on her way to work. At 23, the young woman with tan skin and curly hair that fell to the middle of her back carried in her dark eyes the determination of someone who had known life's difficulties too early. The Crescent Palace, the most luxurious hotel on the Louisiana coast, opened its doors to welcome tourists and business people seeking the best New Orleans had to offer. And that's where Emily worked as a waitress, serving elaborate breakfasts to people who barely noticed her presence. In uniform, with her hair tied back, she moved between tables with the agility of someone who knew every inch of that dining room. "Good morning, Mrs. Teresa," Emily greeted as she entered the kitchen, where the breakfast chef was already preparing the first dishes. "You're here early today, girl." "I need to leave early. Lily has a doctor's appointment," she replied, putting on her apron and adjusting her name tag. Her younger sister, a medical student, had been showing symptoms that increasingly worried her. Emily kept a talent that few knew about. While serving elaborate dishes to guests, her mind transformed each flavor, imagining combinations and recipes that would be successful in her family's restaurant, Flavors of Nola, if it still existed. That small establishment in the French Quarter had been her parents' dream come true, a place where tourists and locals could experience authentic New Orleans cuisine, with recipes passed down through generations. But bankruptcy came unexpectedly, taking with it not only the family's assets, but also the joy of the Anderson family, culminating in a sequence of misfortunes that left Emily and Lily alone in the world. "Maybe someday I'll reopen Flavors of Nola," she murmured to herself while setting the tables for the executive breakfast. It was a distant dream, but it was what kept her going after exhausting shifts. That morning's crowd was more intense than usual. A group of business people had arrived for a conference on investments in the South, and rumors indicated that among them was Ryan Matthews, founder of the Matthews Group, a conglomerate of companies operating throughout the country. Emily wasn't impressed by names or fortunes. To her, they were all just customers who deserved the same courteous treatment. The morning progressed and fatigue was already beginning to weigh on her when Emily received a message on her phone. It was Dana, her best friend, informing her that her boyfriend Matt had arrived in New Orleans as a surprise and was staying at the Crescent Palace. "He said he's having breakfast in the restaurant right now. Give him a kiss from me," the message said. Emily smiled, putting her phone away and looking for Matt among the guests. She knew him only from photos, but remembered a tall man with dark hair who always dressed in well-fitted suits. That's when she spotted a man with his back turned, matching the perfect description, sitting alone at a table near the window. Without thinking twice, she approached silently. "Matt, what a surprise!" she exclaimed, leaning in and placing a quick kiss on the man's cheek. "Dana will be so happy to know that—" The words died in her throat when the man turned around. It wasn't Matt. The eyes looking back at her, a deep and intense brown, belonged to a face she immediately recognized from newspapers and business magazines. Ryan Matthews. The 32-year-old businessman, known for his serious demeanor and for how he had transformed the family business into an empire, observed her with an expression that mixed surprise and curiosity. I'm sorry, sir. I mistook you for someone else," Emily stammered, feeling her face burn with embarrassment. "Please forgive my intrusion." To her surprise, instead of the reprimand she expected, a slight smile formed on the businessman's lips. "I think this is the first time someone has confused me like this," Ryan replied, his deep and controlled voice contrasting with the unusual sparkle in his eyes. "I should feel flattered to be mistaken for someone who deserves such a warm reception." Emily felt mortified. That small mistake could cost her job. "Mr. Matthews, I'm so sorry. It was a terrible mistake," she explained, trying to maintain her composure. "I thought you were my friend's boyfriend." "And does he usually receive kisses from other women?" Ryan asked, raising an eyebrow but maintaining a slightly amused tone. "No, of course not. It was an innocent gesture. I would never... she asked me to..." Emily stammered, realizing that each explanation only made her situation worse. "I understand," he replied, observing her with interest. "What's your name?" "Emily Anderson, sir," she answered automatically, nervously adjusting her name tag on her uniform. "Well, Emily Anderson, I accept your apologies on one condition," declared Ryan, his gaze fixed on her. "That you be the designated waitress to serve me during my entire stay at the Crescent Palace." Before she could respond, the restaurant manager appeared, clearly alarmed to see his employee in prolonged conversation with one of the most important guests. "Any problem, Mr. Matthews?" he asked, giving Emily a warning look. "On the contrary," Ryan replied without taking his eyes off Emily. "I was just getting to know your staff better. Miss Anderson is quite captivating." That unusual encounter, which could have resulted in immediate dismissal, marked the beginning of something Emily could never have predicted. In the days that followed, Ryan Matthews began to frequent the breakfast room at the same time, always requesting to be served by her. At each encounter, they exchanged few words, but their gazes lingered. Emily tried to maintain professional distance, but she couldn't deny the whirlwind of sensations his presence awakened. What she didn't know was that, behind those intense looks, Ryan carried secrets that could completely change her life. Secrets related to the fate of Flavors of Nola and the Anderson family's own history. The accidental kiss had awakened in the businessman not just a passing interest, but a curiosity that would lead him to unravel a plot much bigger than either of them could imagine. For 2 weeks, Ryan Matthews maintained his routine at the Crescent Palace. Every morning, promptly at 7, he occupied the same table near the window and requested only strong coffee, cheese bread, and fresh fruit. Emily noticed that, despite the sophisticated menu available, he preferred simplicity. The businessman, known for his always packed schedule, seemed to find a moment of pause in his day in the waitress's presence. "Is Mr. Matthews staying in New Orleans longer than planned?" asked Mrs. Teresa as she prepared the special coffee he always ordered. "I've never seen a guest so dedicated to breakfast." Emily shrugged, trying to disguise the blush that appeared on her cheeks whenever his name was mentioned. "He must have important business in the city." "And does that business have brown eyes and curly hair?" teased the chef, laughing at Emily's embarrassed expression. "Girl, I'm old, but I'm not blind. He can't take his eyes off you." "It's just politeness, Mrs. Teresa," Emily replied, taking the prepared tray. "Men like him aren't interested in women like me." Upon leaving the kitchen, Emily spotted Ryan in his usual place. He wore a navy blue suit that highlighted his broad shoulders, but there was something different that morning. He seemed more relaxed, less formal. When she approached to serve the coffee, she noticed an open book on the table. "Flavors of Nola Traditional Recipes," Emily read aloud, surprised to recognize the title. It was a book published by her mother 10 years before, when the restaurant was at its peak. "Are you interested in New Orleans cuisine?" Ryan closed the book and rotated it so she could see the cover better. "It's an excellent guide for anyone. Who wants to know authentic local cuisine, don't you think?" The author has a special talent for describing not just the ingredients, but the soul behind each dish. She had, Emily corrected automatically, feeling the familiar twinge of pain when speaking of her mother. "Martha Anderson was my mother." Ryan's gaze intensified, a mixture of surprise and something else that Emily couldn't identify. "Your mother? That's a remarkable coincidence." "The book was published when we had Flavors of Nola, our restaurant in the French Quarter," she explained, allowing herself a moment of nostalgia. "It was small, but always full. Tourists lined up to taste my mother's okra stew and the hush puppies my father learned to make from my grandmother." "And what happened to the restaurant?" asked Ryan, his tone cautious. Emily hesitated. She didn't usually share this part of her story with strangers, especially with clients, but there was something in Ryan's gaze that invited her to trust. "It went bankrupt 5 years ago." A corporate group bought several properties in the French Quarter for a revitalization project. Our rent tripled overnight, and then came other problems: sudden inspections, inexplicable fines. In less than a year, we lost everything. A heavy silence settled between them. Ryan took a sip of coffee, his eyes never leaving hers. "Do you also cook like your mother?" he finally asked, changing the subject. Emily smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face. "Cooking is what keeps me sane. Each recipe connects me with my roots, with who I really am." "I'd like to try it someday," said Ryan, in a tone that sounded more like a request than a casual observation. Before Emily could respond, her phone vibrated in her uniform pocket. It was Lily. Quickly excusing herself, she stepped away to answer the call. "I forgot my medication." Her sister's voice sounded tired. "Could you bring it when you leave work? I'm feeling weak again." "Of course, Lil. I'll leave early today. Hang in there, okay?" Emily replied, concern evident in her voice. When she returned to Ryan's table, she found him standing, putting on his jacket, ready to leave. He left some bills on the table, a generous tip, as he always did. "Family matters?" he asked, noticing her worried expression. "My sister. She hasn't been well lately," she replied vaguely, not wanting to appear as if she was seeking sympathy. Ryan looked at his wristwatch, a discreet yet visibly expensive model. "I have a meeting with investors tonight. I need a chef to prepare a special dinner in the hotel's private dining room. Would you accept the job? It will be well paid." Emily blinked, surprised by the unexpected proposal. "Me? But I'm just a waitress here, Mr. Matthews. The hotel has professional chefs for this type of event." "But none of them is Martha Anderson's daughter," he replied, his eyes fixed on hers. "Tell the manager I specifically requested you. He won't object." Before she could argue, Ryan handed her a card with his personal number. "Call me to discuss the menu, 6 people, formal dinner, but I want authenticity, the real New Orleans cuisine that your restaurant served." Emily stood frozen, the card between her fingers like a talisman. This was an opportunity she couldn't refuse. The payment for one night would be equivalent to weeks of salary as a waitress, money that could help with Lily's medications. That afternoon, after her shift, Emily rushed to the small apartment she shared with her sister in the Bywater neighborhood. She found Lily lying down, paler than usual, her sunken eyes standing out on her young face. At 20, the fourth-year medical student ironically knew her own diagnosis well: kidney problems that were getting worse each day. "How was work?" asked Lily, trying to appear animated. Emily told her about Ryan's proposal while preparing tea for her sister. "It's a chance to show my talent, Lil, and the payment will help with your tests." I don't want you to worry so much about me," protested Lily, sitting up in bed. "And this Ryan guy, are you sure it's just a job?" Emily blushed, thinking about the looks exchanged during the mornings at the hotel. "Of course it's just work. He's Ryan Matthews, the owner of the Matthews Group. He probably has at least 3 houses in the Hamptons and a yacht anchored in Miami." "So what? You're Emily Anderson, daughter of Martha and John Anderson, heir to the best restaurant the French Quarter has ever seen," replied Lily with a conviction that made Emily's heart tighten. Her sister had always believed in her more than she believed in herself. After making sure Lily took her medication, Emily shut herself in the small apartment kitchen. She pulled her mother's recipe book from a drawer, its pages yellowed and stained from use. Those recipes were more than culinary instructions. They were memories, stories, legacies. With slightly trembling fingers, she picked up her phone and dialed the number on Ryan's card. He answered on the second ring. "Mr. Matthews, this is Emily Anderson. About the dinners, I accept preparing it, but I have one condition." She took a deep breath before continuing. "I want complete freedom to create the menu. I'll show you the true taste of New Orleans." From the other end of the line, there was a moment of silence, followed by a response that sounded almost like a smile. "I would never expect less from you, Emily." What she didn't know was that, while she was planning the perfect menu to impress Ryan's guests, he was conducting his own investigation. On his laptop open in the hotel room, a folder contained documents about the bankruptcy of Flavors of Nola, including the name of the company responsible for acquiring properties in the French Quarter. a subsidiary of the Matthews Group itself, acquired 3 months before the beginning of the Anderson family's problems. The kitchen of the private dining room at the Crescent Palace was buzzing with activity. Emily had arrived 2 hours before the agreed time to prepare everything. She wore the chef's uniform the hotel had provided her, immaculate white, with her name discreetly embroidered on it, clothing that fit her as naturally as if she had been born to wear it. "It's been a while since I've seen someone handle knives with such precision," commented Peter, the sous chef assigned to assist her, as he watched Emily chop cilantro with quick and confident movements. "I grew up cutting okra for my mother since I was 7, she replied with a nostalgic smile. She used to say that hands are a chef's first tool. For that evening, Emily had planned a menu that told the story of New Orleans through its flavors: miniature shrimp fritters for the appetizer, seafood gumbo as a starter, shrimp étouffée, and jambalaya as main dishes, and for dessert an elaborate bread pudding made with her grandmother's secret recipe. It was more than a meal. It was her heart served on plates. At 8 o'clock sharp, Ryan arrived with his guests, 2 couples of investors from the north, and a woman Emily hadn't expected to see. Tall, slender, with perfectly styled blonde hair, and a designer dress that highlighted her elegant silhouette, Caitlin Vanderbilt entered the private dining room as if she were the hostess of the night. Emily immediately recognized her from celebrity magazines, Ryan's ex-fiancée, heiress to the Vanderbilt Hotel empire, and a constant figure in the society columns. "Ryan, darling, you didn't mention we would be having a folkloric experience tonight," commented Caitlin, her sweet tone barely disguising the disdain as she observed the traditional dishes being arranged. Ryan, impeccable in his grey suit, approached the kitchen where Emily was putting the finishing touches on the presentation of the starters. "Everything is perfect," he said in a low voice just for her to hear. "Don't be intimidated." Caitlin showed up uninvited, but that doesn't change anything. Something in the way he pronounced those words, how his eyes held hers firmly, gave Emily the confidence she needed. She nodded discreetly and continued her work, focusing on the flavors she wanted to present. The dinner began with enthusiastic praise for the shrimp fritters. The investors, although initially hesitant about regional food, soon surrendered to the perfect balance between spicy and mild, crispy and soft. As Emily served the gumbo, she explained the history behind the dish, the African and Native American influences, the cultural significance of each ingredient. "It's fascinating how cuisine can tell so much about a people," commented one of the investors, a middle-aged gentleman who seemed genuinely interested. "I feel like I'm getting to know New Orleans through these flavors." Caitlin, however, maintained an artificial smile while barely touching the food. When Ryan briefly excused himself to answer a call, she approached the kitchen where Emily was, finishing the main courses. "So you're the waitress Ryan mentions so often," said Caitlin, her blue eyes assessing Emily from head to toe. "I must admit I expected something different." Emily continued arranging the plates, determined not to be intimidated. "I hope you're enjoying the dinner, Ms. Vanderbilt." "It's adequate for what it is, I suppose," Caitlin replied, running a finger along the edge of the counter as if checking for dust. Ryan has always had this curiosity about exotic and different things. It's charming but temporary. Soon he'll return to what he knows, to the world where he belongs. Before Emily could respond, Ryan returned to the dining room. His eyes met hers, and for a moment it seemed he could sense the tension in the air. He walked directly to the kitchen, ignoring Caitlin's calls. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, his gaze moving from Emily to Caitlin and back. "Perfectly fine," Caitlin replied with a calculated smile. "I was just getting to know your hired chef better. Fascinating how you find these hidden pearls, Ryan." The condescending tone didn't go unnoticed. Ryan frowned, but before he could say anything, Emily intervened. "The jambalaya is ready to be served, Mr. Matthews," she said with professional calm. "I recommend enjoying it while it's hot." Ryan nodded, lightly touching Emily's arm in a discreet gesture of support. "Let's get back to the table, Caitlin. Our guests are waiting." While serving the main course, Emily noticed how Ryan subtly positioned himself between her and Caitlin, as if wanting to protect her from his ex-fiancée's venomous comments. The meal continued with the investors increasingly impressed, not only with the food, but with the stories Emily shared about each dish. "This jambalaya has a special history," she explained while serving. "It was my father's favorite dish. He used to say the secret is in the fresh sausage and in the patience to cook the rice slowly." "Did you learn to cook from your parents?" asked one of the guests. "Yes, in our restaurant, Flavors of Nola," Emily replied, a touch of pride in her voice. "It was small, but much loved in the French Quarter." "And why did it close?" asked the same guest, genuinely curious. Emily hesitated, her gaze involuntarily seeking Ryan, who suddenly seemed tense. "Difficult circumstances," she replied vaguely, "but the cuisine lives on in recipes and memories." "How poetic," interrupted Caitlin with false sweetness. "But in reality, business is business. Not everyone has the ability to survive in a competitive market, isn't that right?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Ryan cleared his throat, clearly irritated. "I believe Emily's talent demonstrates exactly the opposite. Her ability to transform simple ingredients into an extraordinary experience shows innate business talent." The compliment caught Emily by surprise. Her eyes met Ryan's, and at that moment, something silent was shared between them, an understanding, a recognition. The tension was broken when Peter entered carrying dessert, golden bread pudding served on a bed of bourbon sauce with mint leaves. "This looks divine," exclaimed one of the female guests, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Tanti, the first bite, a chorus of approval traveled around the table. Even Caitlin, who had been critical throughout the night, couldn't disguise her surprise when tasting the dessert. "This is possibly the best bread pudding I've ever tasted," she admitted reluctantly. "It's a family recipe," explained Emily. "My grandmother added a secret ingredient that makes all the difference." "And what would that be?" questioned Caitlin, arching an eyebrow. Emily smiled serenely. "If I told you, it wouldn't be a secret anymore, would it?" The response drew laughter from the guests and a proud smile from Ryan. Caitlin, realizing she was losing ground, decided to change tactics. "Ryan, darling, remember that restaurant in Paris where we celebrated our engagement?" she asked, her voice syrupy. "Now that was haute cuisine. Although this regional experience has its charm, nothing compares to French finesse, don't you agree?" "Actually, no," Ryan replied firmly, surprising everyone at the table. "The authenticity of this dinner surpasses any starred restaurant I've ever visited. There's soul in every dish, something money can't buy." Caitlin's face hardened, but she quickly regained her composure. "Always the romantic," she said with a forced laugh. "But when it comes to business, you know very well that sentimentality has no place. After all, isn't that what you taught me?" The implication was clear, and Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something in Caitlin's words, an insinuation that seemed to have a hidden meaning that only Ryan understood. At the end of the evening, when the guests said goodbye with warm compliments to the chef, Caitlin made a point of being the last to leave. She approached Emily, who was organizing the kitchen. "Enjoy your moment of glory, darling," she whispered. "Ryan may be fascinated now, but I know him too well. He's a Matthews above all, and the Matthews always choose what's best for business, no matter who needs to be sacrificed in the process." With these enigmatic words, Caitlin left, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and veiled threat. Emily remained motionless, the words echoing in her mind like an omen. "Don't listen to her," said Ryan, who had returned to the private dining room after escorting the other guests to the exit. "Caitlin never took our breakup well." "Why did it end?" Emily asked before she could stop herself. Ryan studied her for a moment as if deciding how much to reveal. "I realized we were together out of convenience, not love. Our families expected this union, but I wanted more." He moved closer, his eyes fixed on hers. "The dinner was perfect, Emily. You have an extraordinary gift." "Thank you for the opportunity," she replied, suddenly aware of the proximity between them. "I want to make you a proposal," said Ryan, his voice low and intense. "But not here. Tomorrow, at breakfast. Can we talk?" Emily nodded, her heart racing with the possibilities that night had opened. What she didn't know was that, as Ryan left the private dining room, his cell phone vibrated with a message from his financial director. Documents of the acquisition of French Quarter developments located confirmed direct involvement in the bankruptcy of Flavors of Nola restaurant, awaiting instructions. The sun had not yet risen when Emily arrived at the Crescent Palace that morning, after a night practically without sleep, turning over in her mind every detail of the dinner, every look exchanged with Ryan, every word whispered by Caitlin. She had barely been able to concentrate during the bus ride from the Bywater neighborhood to the hotel. Lily had noticed her agitation. "This businessman really got to you, huh?" she teased as she watched her sister carefully choose her outfit for the next day, something she rarely did. "I've never seen you like this because of a man." "It's not because of him," Emily lied, opting for a light blue blouse that highlighted her skin tone. "It's the professional opportunity he might represent." But it was impossible to deny to herself. There was something about Ryan Matthews that attracted her magnetically. It wasn't just his impeccable appearance or his social position, but the way his eyes seemed to see beyond the waitress, as if he recognized something in her that she herself didn't perceive. Upon entering the hotel kitchen, Emily was greeted by Mrs. Teresa with a mischievous smile. "Looks like someone made a good impression last night," commented the chef, pointing to a flower arrangement on the counter. "It arrived early with your name." Emily approached the flowers, an arrangement of tropical lilies in vibrant tones that perfumed the environment. Attached was a card with Ryan's firm handwriting. "Thank you for making dinner unforgettable. Looking forward to our breakfast, R.M." "Is Mr. Matthews here yet?" she asked, trying to control the blush spreading across her cheeks. "He's on the private terrace," replied Mrs. Teresa. "He asked to serve breakfast up there when you arrived. Special menu is already prepared." The Crescent Palace Terrace was on the top floor, with a view of the entire Mississippi River. When Emily arrived carrying the tray with coffee, fruit, and fresh bread, she found Ryan with his back to the door, contemplating the horizon where the sun was beginning to rise, painting the sky orange and pink. "It's the most beautiful view in New Orleans," he said without turning around, as if he had sensed her presence. "But still, it doesn't do justice to the beauty of this city." Emily placed the tray on the table and remained silent, observing Ryan's profile against the rising light. There was a serenity in him at that moment, something distant from the image of the ruthless businessman that magazines portrayed. "Sit with me," he asked, finally turning to face her. "Please, not as a waitress, but as my guest." Hesitantly, Emily took the indicated seat, feeling out of place in the role of guest. Ryan served coffee for both with ease, as if they were accustomed to sharing breakfasts for years. "The investors were impressed yesterday," he commented. "Especially with you. Your passion for New Orleans cuisine, your story, they felt the authenticity." "Thank you," Emily replied, allowing herself a small smile. It was special to be able to cook those recipes again. Ryan took a sip of coffee, his eyes never leaving hers. "I was serious about the proposal. I want to offer you an opportunity, Emily." He opened a folder that was on the table and removed some documents. "I'm acquiring a space in the Garden District for a new gastronomic venture focused on regional cuisine. I want you to be the head chef with complete freedom to create the menu." Emily blinked, stunned by the unexpected proposal. "Me? But I don't have official training. I don't have experience in large restaurants." "You have something much more valuable," interrupted Ryan. "Authenticity, knowledge that comes from generations, not from culinary schools. That's exactly what I'm looking for." Emily's heart raced. This proposal was the realization of a dream she had buried, along with Flavors of Nola, the chance to honor her parents' legacy, to create something of her own. "The salary would be 3 times what you earn here, plus profit sharing," continued Ryan, "and we would have a specific clause to allow you to develop your own projects in the future." "Why?" asked Emily, suspicion finally breaking through the cloud of surprise. "Why me? We barely know each other. There are hundreds of talented chefs in New Orleans who would kill for an opportunity like this." Ryan placed the cup on the table and looked at her intensely. "Because in 5 minutes tasting your food, I felt more emotion than in years frequenting the best restaurants in the world. Because you cook with soul, Emily. And because—" he hesitated, as if measuring his next words. "Because, since that accidental, 'Hakis, I can't stop thinking about you,'" the confession hung between them like an unasked question. Emily felt her face burn, recalling that embarrassing moment that now seemed predestined. "Ryan, Her cell phone rang, interrupting what she would say. "It was Dinah." With an apology, Emily answered. "Em, you won't believe it." Her friend's voice sounded agitated. "I just saw on TV. The Matthews Group announced a revitalization project for the French Quarter. It's the same group as the guy you—" "Confused with Matt, isn't it?" Emily's world seemed to stop. What kind of project?" "A sort of sophisticated commercial center. They're saying they'll preserve the historic facades, but transform everything inside. It started 5 years ago with some specific acquisitions, and now they're revealing the complete project." 5 years. Exactly when flavors of Nola began to face problems. Exactly when the rent tripled overnight. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, forming an image that Emily didn't want to see. "I need to hang up," she said abruptly, ending the call. When she looked up at Ryan, he was no longer smiling. Something in his expression had changed, as if he had guessed the content of the call. "Is it true?" asked Emily, her voice trembling. "The Matthews Group is behind the revitalization project in the French Quarter." Ryan took a deep breath, his face assuming the neutral expression of a businessman. "Yes, it's a project that began 5 years ago, even before I assumed total control of the company." "So it was you," said Emily, the words coming out as a horrified whisper. "It was your group that bought our restaurant's property, that tripled our rent, that orchestrated all those inspections until we broke." "Emily, it's not that simple," Ryan tried to explain, his voice controlled. "I wasn't directly supervising these acquisitions at the time. French Quarter Developments was a subsidiary that operated with some autonomy." "But it was your company!" Emily's voice rose, laden with pain. "While you were in Paris celebrating your engagement with Caitlin, my parents were losing everything they had built during a lifetime." Ryan paled. "How do you know about Paris?" "Caitlin made a point of mentioning it yesterday." Emily rose sharply, knocking over her coffee cup. The dark liquid spread across the white tablecloth like an ink stain. "Was all this, what? Guilt? You discovered?" "Who I was and decided to redeem yourself by offering a job to the daughter of the family your company destroyed." "No." Ryan also stood, his face a mask of anguish. "I only discovered the connection later, Emily. I swear that when I met you, when I invited you to cook, I didn't know about the Matthews Group's involvement with flavors of Nola. And now that you know, this proposal, is it charity? Alms to clear your conscience?" Ryan ran his hand through his hair, clearly disturbed. "It's nothing like that. My feelings for you are real, and this proposal is based on your talent, nothing more." Emily recoiled as if she had been physically struck. "Feelings? How can you talk about feelings when your company destroyed my family? After we lost the restaurant, my parents were never the same. My father became sick with grief, my mother lost the will to cook, and now you show up with flowers and job offers." She gathered her things, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "Keep your restaurant in the Garden District, Mr. Matthews. I'm not for sale." "Emily, please." Ryan took a step toward her, but she raised her hand, preventing him from coming closer. "You know what Caitlin said yesterday? That the Matthews always choose what's best for business, no matter who needs to be sacrificed in the process. It seems she knows you better than I thought." With those words, Emily left the terrace, leaving Ryan motionless, looking at the coffee stains spreading across the white tablecloth like a dark omen. Back in the kitchen, Emily tried to contain her tears while storing her apron in the employee locker. Mrs. Teresa approached, concerned. "Girl, what happened? You're pale." "I need to leave early today, Mrs. Teresa." "It's a family emergency," lied Emily, unable to explain the storm devastating her inside. As she left the hotel, Emily's cell phone rang again. It was Lily, and her voice sounded weak and frightened. "I'm not feeling well. I think need to go to the hospital." Emily's world, which already seemed to be crumbling, now collapsed completely. Temporarily forgetting the pain of betrayal, she ran to catch the first bus toward Bywater, praying she would arrive in time. On the terrace of the Crescent Palace, Ryan remained motionless, looking at the view that had earlier seemed so promising. On his cell phone, the message from his financial director remained unanswered. Mr. Matthews and Mr. Vanderbilt appear as the main architects of the strategy to devalue properties in the French Quarter. Operation conducted by William Matthews, your father, and Edward Vanderbilt, Caitlin's father. Confirm instructions to permanently file these documents. The New Orleans City Hospital was packed that morning. Emily made her way through corridors, filled with people seeking medical attention, firmly holding Lily's hand, who was trembling and sweating. After hours of waiting, they finally got an appointment. "Advanced kidney failure," explained the doctor with a grave expression after examining the results of tests Lily had done the previous week. "She needs to start hemodialysis immediately and get on the list for a transplant." The words hit Emily like physical blows. She knew her sister wasn't well, but she hadn't imagined the severity of the situation. How much does the treatment cost?" she asked, financial reality immediately imposing itself. The doctor explained that although Medicare would cover the procedure, the wait could be long. For faster and more complete care, with all the necessary medications, a private clinic would be the best option, at a cost that was far beyond Emily's means. "How much time does she have without treatment?" asked Emily, her voice barely audible. The doctor's look was enough to answer. There wasn't much time. In the days that followed, Emily resigned from the Crescent Palace, unable to bear the idea of encountering Ryan again. She found a job at a small restaurant in the Riverwalk Market, where the pay was even lower, but at least she could stay closer to home to care for Lily. "You need to eat something, Lil," insisted Emily, offering a light soup she had prepared especially for her sister, following the dietary restrictions recommended by the doctor. Lily, increasingly weak, forced a smile. "You should have accepted that businessman's proposal. The money would come in handy now." "Don't mention that man," replied Emily, the hurt evident in her voice. "He and his family are responsible for everything bad that happened to us." "But he didn't even know, Em. From what you told me, he seemed genuinely sorry." "Regret doesn't pay medical bills," retorted Emily, helping her sister sit up to eat. "We'll find another way." But as the days passed and Lily's condition worsened, Emily began to despair. She had secured a spot for hemodialysis through Medicare, but the first session would still be 2 weeks away, time that Lily might not have. The medications were expensive, and her savings were rapidly running out. On a particularly difficult afternoon, when Lily had an episode of dizziness followed by vomiting, Emily made a decision she never imagined. With a heavy heart, she dialed the number she still kept in her phone. "I need to see you," she said simply when Ryan answered. There was no need to identify herself. The momentary silence on the other end of the line indicated he knew exactly who it was. "Where and when?" he replied, his deep voice revealing a mixture of surprise and relief. They arranged to meet at Jackson Square, a public place where Emily would feel safer. When she arrived, she saw Ryan sitting on a bench, wearing surprisingly casual clothes, jeans and a light blue shirt, without the suit that seemed to be his second skin. Somehow this way he seemed more human, less the ruthless businessman she had imagined in recent days. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," said Ryan when she approached, standing up but keeping his distance, respecting her space. Emily sat down, unable to look directly at him. "I didn't come for you, I came for my sister." In a few words, she explained Lily's situation, the kidney failure, the urgent need for treatment, the prohibitive cost. "I wouldn't ask anything for myself," she concluded, the words coming out with difficulty. "But for Lily, she's all I have left." Ryan listened in silence, his face a mask of genuine concern. When Emily finished, he nodded slightly. "I'll take care of everything," he said simply. "Today, Lily will be transferred to the best nephrology clinic in New Orleans. All costs will be covered." Emily finally raised her eyes to face him. Why? Out of guilt, to clear your conscience. Because I care about you, Ryan replied, his voice firm. And because, indeed, I bear part of the responsibility for what happened to your family, even if indirectly. He hesitated as if measuring his next words. In the last few days, I've thoroughly investigated what happened to Flavors of Nola. I discovered things that I'd rather not know. What things? Asked Emily, a mixture of fear and curiosity in her voice. Ryan took a flash drive from his pocket. It's all here, documents, emails, meeting records. The truth about how your restaurant was deliberately ruined. He handed the flash drive to Emily, who took it as if it was something fragile and dangerous at the same time. My father and Caitlin's father worked together on this French Quarter project. They identified key establishments that needed to be removed for the plan to move forward. Flavors of Nola was one of them. Too popular, too rooted in the local culture. That obstacle, Emily felt her stomach turn. So it was deliberate. Each inspection, each fine. All part of a strategy to force you to sell, confirmed Ryan, the disgust evident in his voice. When I took full control of the Matthews Group 2 years ago, these operations had already been completed. The documents were filed away, the evidence hidden. And you never questioned, never wondered how so many traditional businesses simply gave up at the same time. Ryan lowered his head, the shame evident in his gesture. I was focused on international expansion, on new markets. I trusted the decisions that had been made before me. It was a mistake. A heavy silence settled between them, filled only by the sounds of the square, children playing, tourists photographing the cathedral, street vendors announcing their products. This doesn't bring my parents' restaurant back, Emily finally said. It doesn't erase their suffering. No, it doesn't, agreed Ryan. But perhaps we can build something new, something that honors their legacy. He explained that he had personally acquired the property where Flavors of Nola was located. Not through the Matthews Group, but with my own money. It's exactly as it was left, closed all these years. The keys are yours, if you want them. Emily stared at him, trying to decipher his intentions. Why would you do that? Because, since that accidental kiss, something changed in me, Ryan replied simply. You made me see beyond the numbers, beyond the business, and because I believe it's the right thing to do. Before Emily could respond, her cell phone rang. It was Dana who had stayed with Lily. She fainted. The ambulance is on its way, but... Emily's world seemed to crumble again. She stood up abruptly, panic taking over. It's Lily, she explained with a trembling voice. Ryan immediately took action. My car is right there. We'll get there faster than any ambulance. With no time for hesitations or wounded pride, Emily accepted. Within minutes, they were in Ryan's car, speeding through the streets of New Orleans toward Bywater. During the journey, he made several calls, mobilizing resources, doctors, contacts. Emily watched astonished, how doors opened with a simple mention of the Matthews name. When they reached the small apartment, they found Lily unconscious on the sofa, with Dana panicking beside her. The ambulance is taking too long, said her friend, tears streaming down her face. We won't wait, decided Ryan, carefully picking Lily up in his arms. My personal doctor is already waiting for us at St. Raphael's clinic. In the car, Emily held her sister's hand, silently praying. Ryan drove with concentration, occasionally casting concerned glances through the rearview mirror. She's going to be okay, he said, trying to convey a confidence he didn't feel. I promise you, Emily. At the clinic, everything happened with impressive speed. Lily was immediately attended to by a complete team, taken for tests, connected to machines. Emily observed it all as if in a dream, unable to fully process reality. Doctor, Matthews is the best nephrologist in the South, explained Ryan as they waited in the corridor. He took care of my grandfather for years. Hours passed before the doctor came out to speak with them. His countenance was serious, but not pessimistic. We've started hemodialysis and stabilized the patient, he explained. But the situation is grave. She needs a transplant, and the sooner the better. I'll take the compatibility test immediately, said Emily. I'm her only living relative. The doctor nodded. We'll perform all necessary tests. In the meantime, we'll maintain intensive treatment. When they finally were able to see Lily, she was conscious, though weak. Her face lit up upon seeing her sister, but her expression became confused when she noticed Ryan standing respectfully at a distance. "The famous businessman," she murmured with a weak smile. "Come to check if I'm a good investment?" Ryan approached, a gentle smile on his face. "I came to ensure you receive the best possible treatment. Your sister is very important to me." Lily looked from Ryan to Emily, perceiving something unspoken between them. "So you're the guardian angel who sent us to this private clinic?" "He's just trying to fix a mistake from the past," intervened Emily, still unable to fully forgive. "Whatever the reason," replied Lily, her voice weak but determined, "I'm grateful, and you should be too, Em." When night fell, Ryan insisted that Emily go rest in the apartment he maintained in the lower garden district, close to the clinic. "It has 2 bedrooms. You'll be completely comfortable. It's important that you rest to help your sister." Too exhausted to argue, Emily accepted. On the way, they passed through the French Quarter. The lights illuminated the colorful facades of the historic houses, many of them now occupied by sophisticated shops and gourmet restaurants, the result of the revitalization project. "It was there," said Emily, pointing to a corner building with closed doors and a faded sign. "Flavors of Nola." Ryan slowed down, observing the place. "It's more beautiful than I imagined." "It was," corrected Emily, nostalgia evident in her voice. "It was the most welcoming place in the French Quarter. On Sundays, my mother made gumbo for the neighborhood. We charged just enough to cover the costs. It was our way of thanking the community that always supported us." Ryan parked the car. "Want to go in? I have the keys with me." Emily hesitated, her heart racing. She hadn't set foot in that place for 5 years. "I don't know if I'm ready." "You don't have to be alone," replied Ryan, offering his hand. "I'll be by your side if you'll allow me." At that moment, something changed between them. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of an understanding. Emily didn't accept his hand, but she nodded slightly. "Let's go in." The smell of dust and abandonment invaded Emily's nostrils as soon as Ryan opened the door to the old flavors of Nola. The darkness of the place was slowly dissipated when he found the light switch, revealing a space frozen in time. Tables and chairs were still arranged as if waiting for customers who would never return, now covered with dusty white sheets. On the wall, faded photographs told the story of the place. Opening day, famous customers, 4th of July parties. "I tried to keep everything as it was," explained Ryan, watching Emily walk slowly through the dining room, her fingers sliding over familiar surfaces. "I hired a company to do basic maintenance on the roof and facilities, but I didn't allow them to change anything in the interior." Emily didn't respond immediately. She was absorbed in memories, each corner of the restaurant, awakening recollections she had tried to suppress for years. She stopped in front of a large photo on the main wall. Her smiling parents alongside a young Emily and Lily, all wearing t-shirts with the flavors of Nola logo during the celebration of the establishment's 10th anniversary. "It was 2 weeks before everything started to fall apart," she finally said, her voice a whisper in the silence of the place. "We were so happy, so full of plans. My father had just gotten a loan to expand the kitchen." Ryan remained silent, allowing her to process her emotions, respecting the sacred moment of reconnection with the past. Emily continued her journey until she reached the kitchen. She removed the sheet covering the wood-burning stove, the central piece of that space where so many traditional recipes had been prepared. It was exactly as she remembered, a bit rusted by time, but still imposing. "My mother used to say the secret to perfect hush puppies was in the heat of this stove," she commented, a nostalgic smile forming on her lips. She refused to use a gas stove for traditional recipes. She said each recipe has its own soul, and that a wood fire respected that soul. Ryan approached cautiously, as if fearing to invade a sacred space. "Your mother seemed to be a very wise woman." "She was," confirmed Emily, finally facing him. The dim light entering through the dusty windows created shadows on her face, but her eyes shone intensely. Why did you keep this place intact all these years? Ryan took a deep breath before answering. At first, it was just an investment. The property has historical value, a privileged location, but after I discovered the truth about how the Matthews Group had acquired this space, I felt that I didn't have the right to transform it into something different. He paused, carefully, choosing his next words. Perhaps unconsciously, I was waiting for an opportunity to fix what was broken. Some things can't be fixed, Ryan, replied Emily, her voice firm, but without the bitterness of previous days. My parents will never come back. The time we lost, the memories we could have created here, that's priceless. I know, he nodded. I'm not seeking easy redemption, Emily. Just a chance to do what's right, even if too late. Walking to a cabinet in the corner of the kitchen, Emily opened it and found stacked recipe books, all handwritten, some yellowed by time. She picked up the oldest, immediately recognizing her grandmother's handwriting. This is a treasure, she murmured, leafing through the pages with reverence. I thought we had lost these notebooks during the move. While Emily explored the recipe, books, Ryan observed the place with analytical eyes. Structurally, everything is in good condition. It would need a renovation of the electrical and plumbing systems, of course, but the space itself is solid. She looked up from the books, intrigued by the comment. Are you thinking like a businessman now? I'm thinking about the possibilities, he corrected, about how this place could return to what it was. Emily shook her head, closing the recipe book. I don't have the capital to reopen Flavors of Nola. All the money I can get now goes to Lily's treatment. I have it, replied Ryan simply, and I'm not offering it as charity or compensation. It would be an investment, a partnership, if you want. The proposal hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that went far beyond a simple commercial agreement. Emily studied Ryan's face, looking for signs of manipulation or ulterior motives, but found only sincerity. Why would you do that? She finally asked. What would be your gain? Ryan took a few steps around the kitchen, touching the covered utensils, the hanging pots that had survived time. In recent years, I've built an empire based on numbers, acquisitions, expansions. The Matthews Group is a giant in the market, but he turned to face her, vulnerability visible in his gaze. It lacks soul, Emily. And that's what I felt the first time I tasted your food. A connection with something real. Something that has roots, history. A thoughtful silence filled the space between them. Emily absorbed the words, weighing them against her own ambitions and fears. And the hospital? She suddenly asked. Lily, she's alone. The medical team has my direct contact. Any change will be notified immediately, assured Ryan. We can go back right now if you prefer. Emily shook her head. No, she's sleeping. The doctors said she needed to rest. She hesitated before continuing. Thank you for what you're doing for her. Regardless of what happens between us, that means a lot. The between us didn't go unnoticed by Ryan, whose gaze intensified. I'm not doing this to buy your forgiveness or your affection, Emily. It's simply the right thing to do. I know, she replied, surprising them both with the conviction in her voice. If you were trying to buy me, you would have offered money, not a dream. The conversation was interrupted by Ryan's cell phone. It was the clinic informing that the results of the compatibility tests had arrived. Unfortunately, Emily wasn't compatible to donate a kidney to her sister. What do we do now? She asked, fear returning with full force. Now we use resources that fortunately I have at my disposal, replied Ryan with determination. I'm going to activate the Matthews Foundation. We have a transplant support program that can accelerate the process of finding a compatible donor. During the way back to the clinic, Ryan explained how the foundation, created by his mother, had established one of the largest databases of potential donors in the country. It was after she got sick that I realized the importance of this type of initiative. Unfortunately, we didn't arrive in time for her, but since then we've already helped hundreds of people. The mention of his mother surprised Emily. It was the first time Ryan had spoken about his family in a personal way. I'm "Sorry about your mother," she said sincerely. "It was 10 years ago," he replied, his eyes fixed on the road. "She was the heart of the Matthews family. After she was gone, my father changed. He became colder, more focused on results at any cost. That's when he began to associate with people like Edward Vanderbilt." Emily then understood that there were more layers to the story than she had initially imagined. Ryan also carried his own wounds, his own losses. At the clinic, they found Lily awake and considerably more willing. The first hemodialysis session had had a positive effect, and her color was better. "So lovebirds?" she joked when she saw them enter together. "Solved my medical debts and your complicated situation at the same time." Emily blushed intensely, while Ryan let out a genuine laugh, perhaps the first Emily had heard from him. "Your sister continues to be as stubborn as ever," he replied, approaching the bed. "But I have good news about your treatment." He explained about the Matthews Foundation and the transplant program, giving Lily a hope that seemed lost hours before. "Did you visit the restaurant?" asked Lily later, when Ryan went out to talk with the doctors. Emily nodded, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Everything's there, Lil, exactly as we left it, even Grandma's recipe books." Lily's eyes sparkled. "I always knew you'd go back there. One day it's your place, Em. It's where your talent belongs." Ryan suggested a partnership to reopen Flavors of Nola, revealed Emily, still uncertain about the idea. "And what did you say?" "Nothing yet. It's complicated, Lil. His company was responsible for destroying the restaurant in the first place." Lily took her sister's hand, squeezing it with what little strength she had. "You know what Mom always said about holding grudges? That it's like taking poison and expecting the other person to get sick." Emily smiled at the memory. "She also said that forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's moving forward." "Exactly," confirmed Lily. "And from what I see, this Ryan guy is genuinely trying to fix things, not for the Matthews group, but for himself." The conversation was interrupted when Ryan returned, accompanied by Dr. Matthews. The expression of both was serious, but there was a sparkle of hope in the doctor's eyes. "We have a possible compatible donor," announced the doctor, "a patient from the Matthews Foundation who completed all tests 3 months ago. We need to confirm her availability and perform a few more exams, but the initial indicators are very promising." The news was like a ray of light after days of storm. Emily hugged her sister, tears of relief streaming down both their faces. Later, when Lily finally fell asleep, Emily found Ryan in the corridor on the phone. By the expression on his face, the conversation wasn't pleasant. "I don't care what the board thinks, Edward," he was saying firmly. "This is my final decision. If they want to contest me, let it be in a formal assembly." When he hung up, he noticed Emily's presence. "Sorry about that," he said, putting the phone in his pocket. "Business." "Edward Vanderbilt?" she asked, recalling the name mentioned earlier. "Caitlin's father?" Ryan nodded, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "He and other board members aren't satisfied with some changes I'm implementing in the Matthews group." "What kind of changes?" He hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. "I'm completely restructuring our real estate operations, ending predatory practices, establishing partnerships with local communities instead of simply expelling them, and I'm opening an internal investigation about the acquisitions in the French Quarter." Emily's eyes widened, understanding the implications. "This could affect your control over the company." "Possibly," confirmed Ryan. "My father still holds 30% of the shares, and Edward another 15%. If they unite with other discontented shareholders." "Why risk so much?" asked Emily, genuinely confused. Ryan looked at her, his eyes conveying an unwavering certainty. "Because knowing you made me question everything I built, the price I paid that I made others pay for success, and I realized I don't want to be that kind of man anymore." In that hospital corridor, under the cold light of fluorescent lamps, something definitive changed between them. Emily saw beyond the businessman, beyond the Matthews name, and saw only Ryan, a man struggling to redefine his own path. "About Flavors of Nola," she said, making a decision. "I accept your partnership proposal, but with one condition. Which, he asked, a mixture of surprise and hope on his face. That it be a true new beginning, not just for the restaurant, but for both of us. 6 months later, the French Quarter was experiencing a busy morning. Tourists and locals formed a line that extended along the colorful sidewalk, all eager for the grand reopening of Flavors of Nola. Decorative banners crossed the street, and the aroma of spices and seasonings already escaped through the windows of the historic building, completely restored but preserving its original essence. In the kitchen, Emily was adjusting the seasoning of the special gumbo that would be served at the inaugural lunch. She wore a personalized chef's uniform with the new restaurant logo embroidered, a stylized version of the old symbol, now incorporating elements that represented the union of tradition and innovation. "Are you nervous?" asked Lily, entering the kitchen with a similar apron. 6 months after the successful transplant, she was unrecognizable. Bright eyes, rosy cheeks, renewed energy. The discreet scar on her abdomen was the only visible reminder of the ordeal she had faced. "A little," admitted Emily, tasting the sauce one last time. "It's as if Mum and Dad were here today watching." "And they are," replied Lily softly, adjusting a pot on the completely restored wood-burning stove. In each recipe and every detail of this place, the renovation of Flavors of Nola had been meticulous. Ryan had ensured that each original element was preserved or restored, from the wooden floor to the colonial windows. The only modernizations were made where truly necessary: electrical installations, plumbing, kitchen equipment. The decoration maintained the welcoming spirit of always, with photographs of the Anderson family on the walls, including some new ones. Emily and Lily at the hospital after recovery, the team gathered during the renovation, and even a discreet photo of Ryan and Emily toasting when the work was completed. "Where's Ryan?" asked Lily, arranging the spices on the newly installed shelves. "Taking care of the final details of the operating license," replied Emily, an involuntary smile forming on her lips at the mention of his name. "You know how he is with bureaucracy. He needs to personally verify every comma." The last few months had transformed not just the restaurant, but the relationship between Emily and Ryan. Working side by side on the renovation, sharing ideas and dreams for the new Flavors of Nola, they had built a partnership that transcended professional boundaries. The wounds of the past weren't forgotten, but they had healed, giving way to something new, a mutual respect that gradually blossomed into deeper feelings. The kitchen door opened, and Ryan entered, wearing not one of his usual executive suits, but dress pants and a navy blue shirt with rolled-up sleeves, his new uniform for days at the restaurant. "All settled," he announced, holding up the official documents. "Flavors of Nola is officially authorized to reopen its doors." Emily smiled, approaching to examine the papers. "Amazing how you managed to speed up the entire process. I just used the right contacts this time," he replied, a gleam of satisfaction in his eyes. "And to be fair, the fact that we're restoring a historic establishment and hiring people from the local community helped a lot." This, too, had been part of the plan. The new Flavors of Nola wouldn't be just a restaurant, but a center for preserving traditional New Orleans cuisine. There would be cooking classes for neighborhood youth, an apprentice program to train new chefs, and part of the profits would be allocated to social projects in the French Quarter. "I need to check the dining room setup," said Lily, leaving them alone in the kitchen with a knowing smile. When the door closed, Ryan approached Emily, wrapping his arms around her waist. "We did it," he murmured against her hair, "against all odds." Emily relaxed against his chest, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability before the bustle that would come. "Sometimes it still feels like a dream. A year ago I was serving coffee at the Crescent Palace, certain I would never set foot in this place again." "And now," asked Ryan, pulling back slightly to look into her eyes, "now I'm exactly where I should be," she replied with conviction. The path to this point hadn't been easy. Ryan's decision to investigate the past practices of the Matthews Group and completely restructure his business approach had, as predicted, generated strong opposition. William Matthews, his father, had allied with Edward Vanderbilt and other shareholders in an attempt to remove him from the presidency. The corporate battle was intense and public, with Caitlin using her influence in society columns to try to tarnish Ryan's reputation. The turning point came when documents revealing the extent of unethical practices in the French Quarter project were presented to the full board. Many shareholders, especially the younger ones, aligned with Ryan's new vision for the company, more ethical, sustainable, and connected with the communities where it operated. William Matthews ended up selling his shares and completely distancing himself from the business, unable to accept the new direction. "Is your father still not speaking to you?" asked Emily, knowing the answer but wanting to offer Ryan the opportunity to share his feelings. "No," he replied with a sigh. "But I'm at peace with it. He made his choices. I made mine." The Matthews Group, now under Ryan's exclusive leadership, was undergoing a complete transformation. The real estate division had been totally restructured, with new urban development principles that respected local history and culture. A reparation fund was established to compensate merchants and residents harmed by previous projects. And perhaps most symbolically, the company headquarters was transferred from New York to New Orleans in a gesture that signaled commitment to the development of the South. A knock on the door interrupted the intimate moment. It was Mrs. Teresa, the former chef from the Crescent Palace, whom Emily had invited to join the Flavors of Nola team. "Sorry to interrupt, but the journalists have started arriving for the interview before the opening," she informed with an affectionate smile for the couple. "We're coming," replied Emily, nervously adjusting her uniform. When Mrs. Teresa left, Ryan held Emily's hands between his. "Before we face the crowd, I want to give you something." He took a small blue velvet box from his pocket. Emily felt her heart race, a mixture of surprise and emotion making her breath falter. "It's not what you're thinking," said Ryan with a smile, opening the box to reveal not a ring, but an antique, ornate key. "At least, not yet." "What is this?" she asked, taking the key with curiosity. "The original key to Flavors of Nola," he explained. "I found it among the property's old documents. It belonged to your parents and before them to the original 19th century owners. I thought you should be the one to open the doors today." The gesture, simple but deeply meaningful, moved Emily more than any luxurious gift could have. It was a tangible connection to her past, a symbol of the continuity that the restaurant represented. "Thank you," she whispered, closing her fingers around the key. "For this and for everything else." Ryan leaned in, touching his lips to hers in a gentle kiss. "We're just beginning, Emily Anderson. There's much more to come." The main dining room was impeccable, carefully restored solid wood tables, white, lace tablecloths made by local artisans, tropical flower arrangements on each table. The walls, painted in warm tones reminiscent of New Orleans spices, displayed works by French Quarter artists, another community partnership project that Ryan had suggested. Journalists from various outlets crowded the space, cameras and recorders ready. The reopening of Flavors of Nola had become a significant event in New Orleans, symbolizing not just the rebirth of a traditional restaurant, but a new approach to cultural preservation and urban development. Among the special guests for the inaugural lunch were important figures in New Orleans gastronomy, local authorities, and even some of the loyal former customers who frequented the restaurant before its closure. One of them, an elderly gentleman whom Emily recognized as a Tulane University professor, approached with tears in his eyes. "Little Emily," he said, holding her hands with emotion. "Your mother would be so proud. She always said you had the gift." The reopening ceremony was simple but moving. On the small improvised stage, Emily and Ryan spoke about the history of Flavors of Nola, the importance of traditional cuisine as cultural heritage, and the social projects the restaurant would support. Lily also spoke briefly, thanking the Matthews Foundation for the transplant program that had saved her life and announcing her decision to, after completing medical school, dedicate herself to expanding access to healthcare in vulnerable communities. The catencé. Most symbolic moment came when Emily used the antique key to officially open the restaurant's doors. As she turned the key in the lock, she remembered her mother's words. The kitchen is the heart of the home, and one who cooks with love feeds not only the body, but the soul. The doors opened, and Flavors of Nola received its first customers in 5 years. The reopening menu was a tribute to the original recipes of the Anderson family, with some contemporary touches that Emily had developed. The special gumbo, now called Martha's Gumbo in honor of her mother, was the main dish, served in individual clay pots with the unmistakable aroma of fresh herbs and spices. Outside, the line continued to grow, with people eager to taste the flavors that had become legendary in the French Quarter. On social media, hashtags like Chan Flavors of Nola is back and Chan Cuisine with History were already circulating, with photos of the restored facade and the excitement of the first customers. At the end of that first busy day, when the last customer had been served and the team was celebrating the success of the reopening with a small gathering, Emily found a moment to escape to the newly built terrace on the second floor. From there, she could see the illuminated French Quarter, the historic churches, the movement on the cobblestone streets. New Orleans in all its colorful and vibrant glory. Ryan found her there, bringing 2 glasses of champagne. "To Flavors of Nola," he toasted, handing her one of the glasses. "And to the most talented chef I've ever known." Emily smiled, accepting the toast. "To new beginnings, for the restaurant and for us." They remained silent for a moment, contemplating the view and all they had accomplished in recent months. The journey since that accidental kiss at the Crescent Palace seemed both long and incredibly brief, as if their lives had always been on a collision course, destined to intertwine. "You know what impresses me the most," commented Ryan, his arm encircling Emily's waist. "How a simple misunderstanding completely changed the course of our lives." "It wasn't just the kiss," she replied, leaning against him. "It was everything that came after, the choices we made, the risks we took." "You changed my life, Emily Anderson," Ryan said seriously. "You made me question everything I considered important, rethink the legacy I want to leave." "And you gave me back something I thought I had lost forever," she replied, turning to face him. "Not just the restaurant, but hope, the belief that it's possible to rebuild, to start over." Below them in the main dining room, the team continued celebrating. Lily was playing guitar, while Mrs. Teresa and the other employees sang old New Orleans songs. The joy was palpable, overflowing through the open windows and mixing with the night sounds of the French Quarter. "What comes next?" asked Emily, her eyes reflecting the city lights. Ryan smiled, that smile she had learned to love, not the calculated smile of the businessman, but the genuine one that reached his eyes and revealed the man behind the Matthews name. "Now?" he repeated, leaning in to kiss her softly. "Now we write our own story, one day at a time." And there, on the terrace of the reborn restaurant under the starry New Orleans sky, Emily understood that the true flavor of life was in the choices we make, the chances we give, the bridges we build over the abysses of the past. Flavors of Nola wasn't just a restaurant. It was a symbol of resistance, of renewal, of reconciliation. An accidental kiss had changed everything. And now, each conscious and desired kiss sealed the promise of a future that neither Emily nor Ryan could have imagined a year before, a future built not despite the scars of the past, but through them, transforming pain into purpose, loss into legacy, and a casual encounter into the beginning of a shared journey, as rich and complex as the flavors of New Orleans that now united their lives forever. Dear listeners, we hope that Emily and Ryan's journey has touched your hearts. This story of overcoming, forgiveness, and new beginnings reminds us that even when everything seems lost, love and perseverance can rebuild what was broken. If you were moved by the flavors and feelings of this New Orleans narrative, we have a special playlist with other equally engaging stories waiting for you. Find it by clicking on the link to the left. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on this video. Each day, we bring new stories that explore the complexities of life and the American heart. And have you ever experienced an accidental kiss that changed the course of your story? Share with us in the comments.